What you need to do, Alan, is you need to go and buy a set of headphones while you're in Tennessee and leave them at your parents' house.
Exactly. But, hide them somewhere so they don't know.
Yeah.
Dig up a floorboard and, put them underneath that.
Oh, there you go. It'll be like the telltale heart.
Yeah.
It'll be except, headphones.
Hey, welcome back to Even More Mashed Up. We are the pop culture podcast where two professors sit and talk about all things pop culture. That's assuming you're sitting, Patrick. I'm Alan.
I'm Patrick, and yes, I am sitting. And I do believe that people will believe this episode will be the GOAT amongst our various episodes. Or do I mean goats?
Don't you mean the goats, I was going to say?
I literally just said that, Alan.
But shouldn't it be the goats? Shouldn't it be because it's two of them?
I'm in Tennessee. Yeah, I'm in Tennessee, so maybe the lag is worse. Yeah. It's like a longer distance, so it probably take longer.
I said goats, and then there was a pause at which I said, or do I mean goats? Had you not talked over the pause, you might have heard the pause
and
not plowed into my line.
I'm literally in Tennessee, so it takes sound longer to get here than it would if I were in Dallas.
I don't think that's true.
It has to travel, 9 hours more.
Rich, how are you the engineer for this show with that kind of understanding of sound?
Oh, I've learned long ago just to agree with whatever the crazy people say.
All I'm saying is you have to.
I'd like to make clear, I'm not the crazy one.
We're
all the crazy one. We show voluntarily to this every week.
Mm-hmm.
We chose this.
Yes.
I'm very sorry, Patrick. I apologize for stepping over the line on that. I hope you won't be too Thor at me.
Oh God. Was that a version of your opening, or did you have something?
I was gonna say my opening was gonna be, I hope Patrick doesn't get Thor at me if I, down talk the MCU again.
Well, it's possible you might not be alone in doing that.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Come to the dark side.
Though I do have to say that when I was driving Vicky yesterday, she did mention that she enjoyed Thor: Love and Thunder, which, by the way, we're talking about Thor: Love and Thunder.
I didn't think it was that
figured
bad.
Out the goats reference.
I had to suffer 7 hours of waiting to get to it.
Right? It's not Kenobi bad.
Oh no, nothing's Kenobi bad. Except Kenobi.
Well, I mean, the Book of Boba Fett.
Book of Boba Fett is even beyond Kenobi bad.
Okay, sure. Right. Anything on Disney Plus, sure.
No, come on. We can't say anything on Disney Plus. There's some good stuff on Disney Plus.
I mean Star Wars. I meant Star Wars stuff on Disney Plus.
There's good Star Wars stuff on Disney Plus.
What?
The original movies?
Okay, the stuff that Disney Plus has made. The original movies don't count.
We could argue about this forever, which is not Thor related at all, but that's okay. Vicky's actually enjoying Miss Marvel too, so I think we should get her on, since Patrick, I think, might have complaints about that too.
Oh, on Ms. Marvel? I have a lot of thoughts about the show. Let's just leave it at that. Okay. There's a lot I think to talk about there.
Well, before we get to Miss Marvel, we got to do Stranger Things 4, which is next week, right? We're working our way.
I believe that is the plan, yes. If we ever get to actually talking about Thor today, which, by the way, weren't we supposed to be efficient on this episode?
That was
we are efficient. We were supposed to start at 2:30, and my clock says 2:28. So
yes,
I feel like
we are at least, if not efficient, we are early.
Yes. Okay. So it would be efficient or be early, and we decided to go with early, knowing our complete lack of efficiency.
That's why he's like, "You want to do early? Sure," because I know as best as you guys are going to try, we're not going to be efficient. When you said,
what's going to fix our problem? What's going to fix our problem is starting 10 minutes early.
Yeah. To be fair, this is us trying to be efficient.
Yeah. Well, when you said, "Hey, we should debate the two intros," I was like, "Nope, Patrick."
Well, no, it wasn't going to be like a serious debate. We've done this before where it was like, which you were supposed to do a poll, remember?
I did a poll. You lost.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Did I win?
Well, Alan voted and I voted. And
I never saw the poll.
Well, that's on you.
It sounds like it was 100% then.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Maybe if you look for the poll, you'd find the poll.
Oh, I didn't see the poll.
That you demanded.
Mm-hmm.
I demand a poll. I shall not look for said poll nor vote in said poll.
Number one, I shouldn't have to look for the poll. It should just make itself immediate apparent to me. Clearly,
democracy requires effort.
There were some poll shenanigans. Yes, clearly there were lost ballots, and I'm going to declare myself the winner anyways.
Oh,
so you're going to go with are you launching a Stop the Steal campaign then?
A stop the poll. Yes.
Yeah. Well, but you're arguing that it was stolen, right?
Stop the stolen poll.
Yeah.
Bunch of poll thieves. Hashtag efficiency. So, yes, we're talking Thor Love and Thunder today.
Yes.
We are, which apparently you hated. Have we finally come to the point?
I did not hate it. I just was... I guess I'd say I was underwhelmed.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy, though, right? It's a little crazy to be underwhelmed by a film that was this bright and this loud.
Yeah.
Stuffed full of stuff, and yet I kind of felt the same way, Patrick, as I was sitting in the theater. It's not that I thought it was terrible.
Yeah,
I didn't feel engaged like I did for Ragnarok, and there might be reasons for that we can talk about. But
yeah, I have some. I mean, at least speaking for myself, I think I have some reasons why I think I felt a lack of engagement.
I think I do too. I think that you're gonna, sigh when you hear some of mine because they may be themes that we've heard before.
Yeah, possibly.
For me. So I wouldn't call it a dumpster fire, but I wonder if Rich would.
No. Well, yeah, I guess.
Well, Rich.
I guess depending on what I had to go through, it seemed so much better because I finally got to see it. When it's starting at 1:30, I got 10 minutes into the movie, and then the fire alarms go off, and everyone has to shuffle out. And like high school or like grade school, we're all just standing outside in lines, kind of waiting. And then eventually, okay, everyone can go back in, after like half an hour. And you go back in, you sit in the dark theater, you wait 10 minutes, the fire alarm goes off again, everyone shuffles out, a bit slower this time. They say, okay, this time we swear you can go back in. You go back in, you sit in the dark for a while. Eventually somebody else gets up and asks, and they realize they've forgotten about you. And they're not going to show that showing because it's gotten to about 3:40, 3:50. And the next showing at 4:45, they're just going to jump to that one. So you wait in another line at the guest service to thankfully get 2 free tickets and get your other ticket bumped to the 4:45 or 4:55 or whatever, and eventually watch it so that by the end that's like 7 o'clock or 7:30 at night, you've left the theater.
But you left with 2 free tickets,
I
right?
did. I'll be honest, I left thinking I had won.
Yes.
Despite
to be fair, I mean, again, I have some doubts about Rich's version of this story.
Why?
Okay.
Because it seems odd to me that, Rich, I don't pay for my own movies, Baldwin, somehow walked away with seeing Thor and getting 2 free movies. I think Rich pulled the fire alarm both times.
You can neither prove in any way that happened.
Just
because they leave the fire alarms unattended in a spot where the cameras don't have coverage is irrelevant.
As far as denials go, Rich, that is about the worst denial I think I've ever heard.
Well, I think Patrick has done some Inspector Lewis level detecting here.
It's even less than Inspector Lewis.
I think it's telling that you think I have the restraint to stop at 2 tickets.
Well, you know what? I mean, I don't know when you're going back again.
Yeah. Every time I go to theaters, the fire alarm just goes off like crazy.
At some point, they're going to connect the dots. Every time this guy shows up, the fire alarm goes off twice.
Here's a thought. If I had a free ticket to a movie, and I was just thinking about things, I would think, has anybody ever done me a movie favor in the past? Like
I don't live in the past. Those things have happened
when I forgot my credit card and couldn't pay my own way in, and then did anybody then offer me popcorn that I gobbled up? Like that would be the kind of person I might say, "Hey, come see a movie with me," because
I'm pretty sure
I owe you
transferable.
But that hasn't. When that happens, I guess maybe.
Yeah. Again, they're probably non-transferable, and you'd have to go to the theater.
Do you feel like driving down to Holtzville, Long Island, to see Thor: Love and Thunder?
I haven't been in Holtzville for like
they gave you 2 tickets specifically to go see Thor: Love and
Thunder.
Again?
It just any movie.
And they don't have Rich's name on him either. If Rich wanted to, he could give them both away to 2 co-hosts that he adored,
who both would have to drive down to Holtzville, Long Island.
Right, but we'll drive one car, thereby saving on gas and money.
There must be some good food down there, right? Like,
no.
What's the go-to restaurant in your neighborhood, Rich?
Wendy's.
Oh God!
We should really be talking about Love and Thunder.
Probably. Yeah,
we should. Yeah. Be, yes. Feels like we.
As much as I love this delving into my personal life,
we were talking about it in terms of Rich's, exploiting the system to get free tickets, but then it felt like we veered a little bit off.
I simply used a system that was poorly designed.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. So any place you'd like to start, Alan, in terms of talking about the film?
Well, normally we do kind of what we liked and what we didn't like. I don't really have quite a list like that. If we have time at the end, Yahoo Entertainment did rank the 29 Marvel movies, and I'd like to run some of those by you. But if we don't have time, we can save that for later as well.
Could be an entire episode on its own.
Yeah, I think we have done that.
That would be a good, filler episode. Not that we
maybe after Miss Marvel do like the top 30 or whatever.
Yeah. So I'll start with a question for you, Patrick.
All right.
It felt to me like Love and Thunder was a movie that underneath the jokes and the campiness and the, Hemsworth being all Hemsworthy, it was a film that kind of tried to ask some bigger questions. And I wonder how you felt about a movie trying to ask the bigger questions, and if you felt like it then did it well or not.
Now see, that's sort of part of my issue with the film is.
Well, then this is efficiency. Look at us.
I have a hard time kind of thinking about what like the big questions or like the big themes of this movie were.
Yeah.
Because I don't. There's nothing that really. Particularly in terms of Thor, I honestly don't have any idea for a character that's had such a really great arc in, basically through Endgame and the way in which sort of his character was developed. I don't really have a sense of his arc in this film. He seems to be more just kind of pulled along by events and is reacting to them in ways that don't always make sense within the film. So I don't know that I've got a really good sense of like what this film was sort of trying to be about, which is part of the reason why I think it felt a little underwhelming for me, because I have a hard time wrapping my head around kind of like what this film's about. Obviously there's the whole storyline with Jane's cancer, but even that I don't know that it really delved into all that much.
Yeah.
I think that was a problem in some ways, that the way in which Thor is just getting pulled along, as Patrick describes it, was deeply comic for the most part.
Yeah,
and
it was so
Jane's
weird.
Story was profoundly not. And there's things you can do, like to juxtapose the humor and the pathos that work, but I don't think they did that in this movie.
Yeah, well, and that's something we talked about with Ragnarok, too, that I at least remember talking about how in Ragnarok, certain moments like, say, Odin's death that should have been significant felt a little bit flat to me, and I think that issue grows in this film.
Yeah, to me, what my notes read on this point is, by this film, I almost feel like I've seen enough of the original Thor. Like we saw of Thor. Like we saw the original Thor. We saw the really sucky kind of Thor. We saw the funny Thor, and it's almost like they're just out of ideas here.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think, similar. Well, I think part of it, too, is, again, not that I'm slamming Ragnarok, which I thought was a really good film overall.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem in terms of, and this gets into one of my reasons why I think this film is weaker, is that I think Ragnarok was part of a larger narrative building up towards Endgame. And so, Waititi, he was somewhat, I think, hemmed in by the narrative and sort of limited in terms of what he could do. And I think in some ways that was good for Waititi. I think here we see him, completely on his own, and kind of the same way that I felt about the Suicide Squad movie with James Gunn and then the Peacemaker show on HBO, is that when you take away these two directors' kind of limits, it just felt like the film got weaker.
They went all over the place,
Rich,
without any kind of...
Rich, could you tag this minute? Could you tag this in the podcast? Because I want to share the moment where I want to share this with Bobby. The moment where Patrick says, "What we need for good movies is more corporate control of directors." I think.
Absolutely. Corporations need to be much more involved in the making of any movie. They need to be much more hands-on.
I did not say
the reins from the directors, so that they have little to no say in the creation of any film. Money should be forefront to the mind.
I'm not talking about corporate control. I'm talking about the narrative. There is more,
which is written by corporate, but yeah, okay.
It's not corporate control. It's that there were certain things that Thor Ragnarok had to.
No, I actually agree with you, Patrick, in the sense that.
And Thor Love and Thunder has nothing that it needs to do, but I think that's in some ways a detriment to the film.
Yeah, I agree with you in that it feels like literally like if you don't give some of these directors like almost a kind of like a highway of like you need to end here because of the big narrative, they end up just going all over the place and just dropping stuff in there. And then the movie ends, and it's like, oh, we didn't have time to.
Well, and I should clarify that I think in terms of, hang on, is that in terms of Waititi, I think it was the narrative. In terms of James Gunn, I think the issue was that it was him having the rated R designation on the Suicide Squad allowed him to do a lot of gratuitous violence and nudity and things like that.
But yeah, I agree that sometimes the limitations.
I hear that.
I think Gunn and Waititi both need some kind of limits.
Just a point real quickly, though. The idea that, Waititi needs that larger arcing story to make a good movie. Like, of course you can make a good movie that's a standalone movie. I mean, that can be done, right?
It can, but it didn't happen in this case.
Oh, and
for me, it felt like the lack of a narrative was part of the reason.
And Alan, maybe if Waititi had made like a film that wasn't Thor, like if he had made his a more original thing that he sort of that he planned out, maybe it would have been. I just think with Thor, like again, I think Ragnarok helped a bunch with that, and I felt like because that it goes somewhere with this one. Again, I don't know where the film was going until it ended, and even when it ended, I don't know what Thor could possibly do after the end of the movie besides just chill at the village. I know
which might actually be a better movie, quite frankly.
Honestly, I kind of
it would be something different. I mean, Rich is pushing us to one of my big complaints about this movie, and it's the one that I've said too often, but I'll say it again. It's very tropey, like Ragnarok. It's a trope, it's the Ragnarok. Okay. It's like it's the way in which it's the Guardians of the Galaxy 2 problem for me. That the first did so well that it establishes like a whole bunch of beats need to be hit over the course of a story. I think Love and Thunder, I think I would have responded to it more positively if it had come before Ragnarok.
Yeah. Because then you could see Love and Thunder as more of a setup to Ragnarok where it pays off. Like, I think in a way, Love and Thunder feels like it's like this sort of like, not filler, but like this like transitional segment to the next part where he actually makes decisions and becomes more active and has consequences and stuff and like changes as a person.
Right. Well, and even worse, it's not just filler, right?
Yeah.
It's not just filler, but it's also filler that's done kind of in a paint by number kind of way that we've already seen.
Yeah.
At least if it was filler and it was unique, I could live with it better, I think.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I don't know if I would say it needs to come before Ragnarok. I think it needs to come I think it needed to come earlier in Phase 4 because it's a film that's not really doing much of anything beyond sort of what Waititi wants to do within kind of the corner of the MCU that he has, control over with Thor. And, we're well into Phase 4 with no real sense of where it is going.
I mean, you've got the tie-in with the Eternals.
What tie-in with the Eternals?
When he's at the Olympia or whatever, you see the other Titans or whatever, what they're called.
The what? You mean the Celestials?
Yeah. Celestials.
Oh,
that's
the two Celestials in the background.
Yeah, that's it. Like just to imply that there's others and like they're there. Like really... that's it. That's only. It's more of an Easter egg than anything else. But other than that, like I thought Core was gonna be something to do with the Phase 4. Going forward, I thought he was gonna, I don't know, disappear. The sword was gonna get in someone else's hands or something. Or he was going to kill more important gods that would really throw stuff in upheaval.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like the film in general feels kind of, I hate to use this word, but it feels kind of inconsequential.
Yeah.
Like it's.
I mean, Korg doesn't even die. Not that I wanted to die, but like, they don't even. Or Valkyrie. In the trailer and stuff. You think stuff like that's going to happen. It's like, no,
like nothing.
Jane is the only one to
Natalie Portman's character.
Yeah, which if anything is a disappointment that means we lose Lady Thor.
Yeah, well, she can come back as a Valkyrie now that she's dead.
I guess, but yeah, like you said,
it would be more interesting, quite frankly, because it feels like it's reached a dead end.
Yeah, like that's what I was always hoping for. Is that at least at the end you'd have Lady Thor. Somehow, some magical power. I thought Thor was going to wish that she wasn't have cancer. I thought that was what it was going to end with. And then
they generally avoid doing stuff like wishing cancer away just because it doesn't necessarily play well.
I mean, I get it, but like I thought at least the end you'd have, that would have been Love and Thunder. Would have been Lady Thor or Jane and Thor. I guess.
Yeah. But that's the other thing too. At the end, right?
What was that?
Like, I said, think about that at the end. Gore could wish for anything. Like, he could wish not to cure Jane. He could wish, disease away. He could wish peace and prosperity for everybody.
All of his family, and besides just his daughter, all of the people from his culture or whatever.
Right, or just like he could wish that gods would behave well. Like
he could wish that gods had half the power, or that they could only live for 10 years or something.
Or that they were just nice people, you know, like that they weren't, like Zeus or whatever.
Yeah, but none of that would get his daughter back. Like the wishing for his entire species
neither would
back
the vengeance thing. Like it's so weird how at the end Thor's like, you can wish her back, and he's like, oh yeah, like he legit never thought of doing that. Like, and I get you could argue maybe it's a necro sword, like kind of corrupting him.
Yeah.
But like, also it's really convenient that there's a thing that just grants any wish that nobody's used yet in however infinite amount of time the gods existed.
It's also convenient that someone, was able to carve some sort of like rune with Stormbreaker on there when Stormbreakers existed for like a week.
Did somebody
the key to everything?
Yeah, did somebody as soon as that happened in like not Endgame, Infinity War, did somebody like bounce over there and be like, okay, cool, that'll be the key?
Yeah. It was also a very long walk to get to, and I think this goes back to some of what was said earlier, that, the title of the film or the subtitle Love and Thunder is based on, Thor and Gore's daughter Love being teamed up at the end. Like that's that's a joke that Waititi knows is coming, but none of us know it's coming, and so it felt kind of
like I'd forgotten about Love and Thunder until they said at the end.
Yeah, well, I didn't actually catch that the girl's name was actually Love.
Because it's also a stupid name.
Well, I kept referring to her in my notes as Gore's daughter, and I thought, well, I should go look and see what her name is. And like, oh, her name's Love. I'm like, oh, geez, that's the Love and Thunder reference. I'm like, oh, that's kind of...
Yeah, because again, he of course says like my love, but you think, oh, well, it's his
he calls
daughter.
her Love, but I assumed it was just like, my love.
My love, my daughter. Yeah, not like LOVE.
Your name's actually Love.
Like...
It's a little on the nose.
It's too much on the nose.
And it's too much on the nose for no real payoff.
Well, but I thought there were other ways in which the movie was sort of too on the nose too. Like, for example, the kids in cages kind of motif.
Why were the kids there after Thor shows up the first time? Like, he's going to show up to fight Kor anyway. He doesn't need the kids.
It's Gore, not Kor.
It's a G. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gore.
Yeah, Gore the god. You're thinking of Korg.
Maybe. Maybe.
You're getting them mixed up.
Christian Bale is sometimes hard to understand.
Right. But, like the kids are literally in cages. Characters say the kids are in cages. How concretely should we read this kind of metaphor in the movie, do you think? Like, can I ask you a question, like just as a comic book question? What exactly possesses Gore? Is it the sword? Is the sword like the talisman of some other spirit? I'm not quite clear on what has possessed Gore.
Well, I think they say that the sword is cursed so that it basically, I think, sucks the life out of the person using it. That's why he gets all kind of veiny and whatnot. So it's basically killing him.
It's not making him do anything.
I don't think so. I mean, I guess you could add that.
It's like the one ring.
It might be making him more extreme. Yeah, it's kind of One Ring-ish, I guess.
Well, like even the rings, like put me on and whatever.
But so it is weird that you've got Gore the God Butcher, who kills gods, and his big plan is to kidnap a whole bunch of kids. Like that was kind of
like
off-brand.
Right. When he could pursue all of these, but. So, but he wants to kill gods before the sword possesses him or curses him or whatever. It just gives him, I guess, the power.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, again, supposedly it's a sword that can hurt a god, but
it's a god-killing sword that also kills the user.
Right, but so Thor's a god, right?
I
think Thor's just an ordinary person.
So Thor's not a god?
Oh, Thor. Sorry, I thought you said Gore.
No, because Thor's So Thor's a god, but Thor's almost died a bunch of times, and not to a necro sword.
Rich's point is a good one. Gods die all the time.
Yeah,
like we watched him
Zeus
die
died
all the time.
from his own weapon. You would think of all things that would be the one thing that would not kill him.
Well, no, but I mean, like, died. Like gods have died before.
Yeah, you don't need a special thing to kill a god.
And that's my point, is that the whole sword seemed like a lot of work invested in something that people do on a regular basis anyway.
Well, but to be fair, I mean, Odin died after, millennia? Gore doesn't want them to wait for a natural death.
No,
but what I'm saying is Gore could potentially just stab them with a regular dagger, and...
Right, it just seems like you don't need the sword.
Yeah.
Well, but I don't think it's a regular dagger. It's like an Asgardian dagger or something like that, which obviously...
Now this is the old Patrick coming back. Like, he's going to defend the film. I knew we could get him here, Rich.
So here's my question then.
It's not like he gets stabbed with a knife that I got at, Walmart or something.
So when Captain America hit Loki with a shield and it hurt, why?
Because he had a blunt object smashed in his face by a super soldier.
Right. So the point is,
it's not a necklace sword. It's just a chunk of metal.
But it didn't kill him.
But if it hurts you, it can kill you.
But what if Cap had used a Walmart knife?
What if Cap had hit him hard enough to break his neck? I'm just saying, if something can injure you, then it can kill you.
Yeah, assuming you let Cap beat you enough with the shield.
But that's not
which is also
magic.
A vibranium.
It's not Asgardian. It could.
Vibranium's not God, though. It's not otherworldly.
It came from a comet in space. It's got otherworldly properties.
But so did a bunch of the other minerals on our planet at some point.
But a lot of the stuff would be otherworldly to Asgardians as they live on another world.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it would be lesser otherworldly.
Well, maybe Walmart would be making really good knives in an otherworldly situation. Okay, that's probably a stretch. I will acknowledge.
But still, it's such a weird... because when I first watched it, I was like, okay, cool, he's got a sword that can kill gods. And then you almost forget about, oh, wait a minute, this is after, Endgame, Infinity War, Ragnarok, all these things where they fought other quote-unquote gods not using the necklace sword, and they've still died, with, laser beams or whatever. Right. Ego died because of a C4 explosive.
lots of Asgardians have gone down, you know?
Yeah. And even if they're not gods.
I mean, but they were killed by Hela or by,
by Thanos.
Elves or Thanos. None of these things are, your garden variety just weapons. They're all using, infinity gauntlets and dark elven swords and things like that.
Elven sword.
Well, I apologize that we've gone down this track.
Yeah, I do too. But
I'm trying to figure out what it was that possessed Gorr. So here's I do this as a tribute to Ed, who will be listening to this podcast eventually.
Okay.
Because he loves it when I lay contemporary politics over the film.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about kids in cages, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I think this is the question we originally were answering.
Right. Then the sword is Trump. Right. The sword is Trump, who's looking for disaffected people to poison. Gorr would then represent all of the left behind Americans, and the end result is a world without color in which we put kids in cages.
Oh, that just feels really tortured.
Like the kids in cages.
I think it feels too obvious. The problem is it's too obvious.
No, I know. I think the problem is that, I can see where you're getting it from, but it's like the same thing with that whole debate that Thor has with Heimdall's son about what his name is, which I think was maybe supposed to be a whole, dead name, choosing your own pronouns kind of thing, but it doesn't work. Yeah.
Well, it's not.
I think same thing with the kids in cages thing. Like if Waititi is going for that, it doesn't work.
That's my point. Is that he's so obviously going for it. It seems to me that it's so bluntly done that it just kind of falls limp in its execution. That if it's thinking about the way in which the disaffected can be mobilized to do terrible things, that's an interesting kind of question to ask in a movie. It just feels like so ham-fistedly done here that it doesn't carry any kind of weight or power. I can't imagine that putting kids in cages and then having a character say, "There are kids in cages," is not in some way trying to use Thor to talk about this. I'm not arguing it's done effectively.
Yeah,
I'm arguing
the
how do you avoid that?
I totally missed it. Then
it can't be true.
No, I see where you're getting it from. I totally missed it, which, again, is probably just resonating with the point that it's not done effectively at all.
It's either completely missed, or for me, it was like, oh, so now we see kids in cages and we're labeling them literally kids in cages, which is, the exact language that was used before. To me, there were several moments like this where the film might ask interesting questions. Like an interesting question you might ask is, what do we do when our God or our gods abandon us? Like, that's kind of an interesting question.
I was really kind of hoping for something like that, where it was going to change up the whole pantheon of gods, where, like, all the followers are like, gods are nothing. If they can be killed and they don't help us, to heck with them all,
Right, but Gorr's response, right, is like, oh, I'm just going to kill all of them, is also not a particularly thoughtful meditation on, why it is that we entrust so much in these gods that don't care about us. It seemed to me like there were several moments in the film where you could have asked more interesting or more meaningful or more profound questions, but I agree with Patrick. It just never happens in this film.
The film, if to the extent that those profound questions are in there, I don't really feel the film is interested in exploring them. They feel like throwaway gags to me.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And those are big questions that can't be gags or shouldn't be gags. Yeah, they shouldn't be gags. When we left, Vicky was thinking about the way in which on the Twitter and whatnot, younger people always complain about being asked to do the work by like boomers or whatever. Yes. Like you've created these problems and you're leaving the work. And there was like maybe like a subtext of that. Can I ask you a question? Can Thor literally just share his power with kids and other people like he does in the movie?
Well, that was one of the things that I again picked up from reading, the Wikipedia entry on this film. And I didn't catch it during the film. The key to Thor sharing his power was Zeus's thunderbolt.
Oh, I entirely missed that.
I totally missed that too. The thing that's running between all the kids, which by the way makes the image of the world tree is Zeus's lightning bolt. Like, that was why, because the whole thing about getting Zeus's lightning bolt, I was like, it seemed completely immaterial. And then,
I thought they were going to it's just more power that he was going to use to like.
Oh, I thought the Thunderbolt was going to be. I thought it was going to be the Thunderbolt, not Stormbreaker. That was the key. And
I thought Valkyrie just needed a cool weapon. Honestly,
that's what I thought too. It was like something that Valkyrie or Jane was going to have.
It was through the means of Zeus's lightning bolt that Thor was able to empower all of the kids, which again completely missed in the film.
All right. Can I give you a quick fair or foul then that kind of is relevant to what we're talking about?
Sure.
So Amy Nicholson from NPR Los Angeles wrote the following, quote, I was really compelled by the ideas Waititi kept teasing in the film, but the actual style of it, the eagerness to please, made me take a step back from everything. But what he's discussing is really smart.
See, I'm gonna call that mostly foul.
Yeah.
Except for the part about teasing, because that's kind of what, like, Waititi teases these things.
Right.
And there's been a lot of people complaining because at one of like the press junkets for the show, I think Waititi was asked a question of like, how gay is the film? And he asked Natalie Portman to reply, and she said, "Oh, it's very gay." And then the LGBTQ plus community is pretty unhappy because they feel like it's an example of queer baiting, because there's nothing gay in the film beyond Korg and
Dwayne the Rock Johnson
and some other things. But that again, that's kind of the issue is that Waititi is teasing these things that could be profound, but they're just being teased, and there's not really anything being done with them.
Right. There's like Korg has the two fathers. I think there might be a same gender as Guardian family when they're reunited.
Yes, there is. There is.
And one of Mighty Thor's proposed catchphrases is like something about bringing the rainbow.
Yeah.
Or something like that, like to this colorless world. But again, like the other issues that we've just talked about, like at best this is kind of a window dressing or a lip service or a gesturing towards. I'm sure there are lots of people who are really offended, by the way in which Marvel is like cramming same-sex families down our throats. I think like they're wrong to be upset, but people who are upset that, like that this movie was advertised to be something that it's not is probably fair.
Well, I'm not sure which country it was, but one of the countries that banned the film banned it over the comment about the film being very gay. They're like, "Oh, then we can't show it."
Oh, so they didn't see something in the film that they thought was too much. They just
they just heard the comment and they're like, and then it got, apparently they attributed that comment. I guess the country that banned it said it was because of that comment. But
to be clear, there was that theater in Oklahoma, right? That told people they were going to try to cut the same-sex kiss out of Lightyear, right?
Yeah.
Right, and so it's like it's quite stunning to me that this remains so upsetting to people, or that anybody would think that this was a movie that was just like so gay that it was just offensive to anybody.
That it was a danger to something.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing. Yeah. So I mean that's the thing. There's lots of teases of things that the film could have done, that the film could have been about.
Right.
But that's and a lot of those teases are just kind of odd. Like the moment with Heimdall's son and that whole thing. I'm like, what is the point of that? Like, there was no like what was that conversation for? Like, I mean, beyond.
Well, if you're right, Patrick, it's more of the kind of 70s and 80s multiculturalism that we're critiquing in our book. All new, all different. History of race in the American superhero.
Well done. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, to be fair, Waititi did say that he one of his inspirations, besides this film being a romance film, which we can talk about that as well.
Can we?
The other thing that Waititi said that this film was sort of meant to be, and this sort of hits me deep in my heart, is he wanted to be like an 80s adventure film, specifically citing, among other things, Beastmaster as an influence on the film. And you know how I do love the Beastmaster.
Well, I love the Beastmaster too, but unless you're going to make some kind of comparison between the two goats to the two weasels, Yeah.
I see it more along the lines of something like Beastmaster and this is probably unfair to Beastmaster, but in terms of like an 80s adventure film that's just kind of not really pretending to be anything more than kind of a cheesy 80s adventure film. I think that's kind of what Thor Love and Thunder is. I mean, like even at the end where, we see him and Love going into battle and it says the mighty Thor return, like I'm looking at that, I'm like, okay, or it says Thor will return. I'm like, okay, if Thor returns, like no one's picking up on the Love and Thunder bit. He's not showing up with love. They're going to abandon that in the same way this film abandons the Guardians of the Galaxy with Thor.
Yeah. So I like the idea.
There's nothing that this film is going to do. Nothing that this film does, I expect to really carry on into whatever happens next, even with Thor. Like I feel like
to be honest with you, that doesn't bother me in isolation, but make it a good movie.
Yeah,
it doesn't. Like to me, and I might be a little bit less like big arc focused. I want a good movie. Like I'd like a good 95 minutes.
Yeah,
it's a coherent movie, and if it's not moving the larger MCU forward, I don't care. Like that's fine, but make it a good movie. And there were moments here that were very entertaining, but like when you step away from the movie at the end, it's it was fine. To use Patrick's phrase, it was
perfectly fine.
It was perfectly good. Perfectly good.
I don't remember a lot from it.
That's the thing. Like it's basically like one of those like wafer cookies that you have, like the pink and I don't know, were they pink and white or pink and beige?
Oh, the yellow wafers or something.
No, wafers.
No, you're thinking there were like strawberry, chocolate, and vanilla, right?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
I love those things, but they are so insubstantial, and that's basically what I see Thor: Love and Thunder as. It's basically, I had one of those. I really don't remember anything of the experience. Or the experience did not like have an effect. But I was like, I was there, I had it, I liked it, but it's not,
Well,
it's gone almost immediately after I've consumed it. Like I guess
I like your Beastmaster. I like your Beastmaster comparison because, of course, like those '80s adventure films, one of the things they did obviously was trade in like sexualizing women and counted as entertainment, and that doesn't happen here. Like it's Thor that gets sexualized. But by the way, when we debated the trailer, we talked about the fuzzy butt versus the no fuzzy butt.
Mm-hmm.
The flicking scene would have been much funnier with a pixelated butt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that whole omnipotent city.
scene,
that seems so. The location as a whole seemed kind of stupid.
Well, that whole thing made no sense to me. Like that just seemed like a ginormous waste of time in the middle of the film.
Well, and especially when Zeus ends up being so pointless to the plot.
Yeah, and Russell Crowe's Zeus was, oh god, I was so upset to see him come back in the post credit scenes. Like that was a pointless.
Oh, I didn't stick around for the credit scene.
But that's also another moment where like Thor comes in, he's like, oh, it's Omnipotent City, and oh, Zeus is my favorite god, and then he kills him in cold blood. I'm like, that's one of the places where there was like a very sudden shift in tone, where Thor's joking the whole time, and then he's standing before Zeus and he gets all serious. I'm like, oh, now we're serious. I'm like, okay, so this is like the tonal shifts in this film.
Right,
were jarring. Like Gore
again
at times was super creepy, and then other times he was just kind of there.
Yeah. To me, juxtaposing those different tones can make for effective filmmaking, but it doesn't here.
Well, they don't. I wouldn't say they don't feel juxtaposed. They just feel like shifted between to me. Like juxtaposed implies that you're putting them next to each other for a purpose.
Yeah, right. The tonal shifts though aren't a problem. Aimless tonal shifts are a problem. Like tonal shifts that aren't being used to heighten emotional, intellectual audience responses to the material. That's the problem.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was just very I think Rich said it earlier. It was very meh.
Yeah, and again, it's such an issue. Like we've talked about a lot of recent films where it's like by themselves they're not terrible, but compared to what came before, it's actually a big disappointment. So Thor: Love and Thunder compared to Thor: Ragnarok is a big disappointment.
Yeah, well, Thor: Love and Thunder feels closer to Thor 1 and Thor 2 to me than
like a major step backwards as opposed to Endgame / Ragnarok.
In some ways it does, and in some ways it doesn't, to me. This is a really interesting conversation. I feel like I'm the most positive on the film, but it might be because I've been at the MCU meh stage
maybe
like kind of for a while now.
I really thought Thor was like a slam dunk of sorts of like, oh, it can't, it'll still at least be entertaining and fun. It won't be blah.
You can't miss.
I do have a question for Alan, though, about one aspect of the film that I hope he really enjoyed.
What's that?
There was one moment in the film that I thought would immediately resonate with you.
Oh, that's funny, because I remember leaving the theater, and I said to myself, Patrick said there was one moment in the film that would really resonate with me, and I could not figure out what it was.
Oh, that's so disappointing. It's when Jane explains the multiverse by folding a piece of paper in half and sticks a pencil.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I 100% should have. No, that's a fair. That's
like that's. I'm like it's entirely it's the Stranger Things reference of the Upside Down. I was like, I was like, the moment I saw that, I was like, okay, Alan's gonna hate that, and he's gonna hate kid actors all over this film. Like, this is not a film that's made for Alan because there's kids everywhere.
And there are too many kids. There are too many kids, and like
which,
the Upside Down.
They're all among them are all of Waititi's, Hemsworth, and Portman's kids. In fact, the actress that plays Love is Hemsworth's daughter.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Which is
and they never intended her to be an actor, but there she goes. She did a perfectly fine job. Let me say.
I thought she was pretty good. But but again, like that speaks to kind of some of the I don't know if self-indulgent is quite the right word.
Sort of
the film, but it is kind of like again, that's another thing that I think that people like Waititi and all of them got to enjoy, but I don't know that it necessarily does anything for, the audience.
Yeah, like, I don't care that the kids are there. That's neat, but like...
That's kind of a very egocentric kind of filmmaking style. I feel like the director tried to make it up to me with all the kids by, like, making the soundtrack kind of the soundtrack of my life.
Oh, yeah,
Gen X. But I have to say, pushing Ronnie James Dio to the credits was a huge mistake. Like, Rainbow in the Dark is a film that should have been in the film proper.
You mean a song that should be in the film?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, the song should absolutely have been in the film. Yeah. Huge mistake. Big mistake. Yeah. But, apparently what he was a big metalhead growing up, so...
Yeah. No, the music definitely was something. I was like, oh, Alan will appreciate the music. And again, very, very sort of in keeping with Guardians as well. Just by the way, I was very disappointed with how, like, I really wanted to see like a movie of Thor and the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Did anybody actually expect the Guardians to be in the movie?
I mean, I expected them to be in the movie about as long as they were.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, especially when it cuts to like. It's just flashbacks and stuff. It's like, oh, we're not going to see anything.
Yeah,
no, we're not going to see anything.
Again, it's another thing that kind of bothered me is like I really liked the setup at the end of Endgame with Thor with the Guardians of the Galaxies, and I would have loved to have seen like that running around, and then 10 minutes in this film, they're both shunted back into their own little corners again, and we're back to kind of the status quo.
Especially because Thor keeps going on about how he needs to find himself and whatever, and that seemed like a really good setup to be like. Working with another team, going off and doing stuff, and it's like that could have been the film. As much as I like Jane Foster as like Lady Thor, I would have been fine if he just left Earth completely and was just with the Guardians.
It has all the problems of the worst of like 70s, 80s Marvel crossover comic book events.
Yeah, where they just show up enough to sell the comic.
Like you show up in somebody else's book, but you're not really integrated into the story in a way that's particularly meaningful, or like one of those like limited series that runs outside of particular ongoing series, but like it drops in here and there. Like I always find those incredibly frustrating because they feel forced and faked and not really authentic in any way except like making money, right? Having Chris Pratt and the Guardians show up is a way to like pull in more people to watch the movie, even though they're going to have absolutely no significance whatsoever.
Whatever the next Guardians movie is going to be, you'll probably just pick up right then. So to have the ending bit where they leave and go, like, thank God he's gone or whatever. And then, like, that's it. They won't reference him again.
Yeah, no, it was like I really liked. I thought I liked the setup at the end of Endgame because it seemed to be doing something a little bit different by sort of smushing them together and then go back to
Gamora's not the same Gamora. Things have changed. things have mixed together in a way that now we alters the relationship.
Well, Gamora's not with them at the end. She's off on her own.
That's what I'm saying. Again, it ends with Endgame. It has Peter, looking for her and stuff. And it's like, okay, cool. Here's this neat kind of new setup of like, are they in a relationship? Is it going to just break apart or whatever? But really interested to see them in Thor. But yeah, we don't get any of that.
So all of this conversation, and I know like we're watching time today, leads me to a question I want to ask, which has been asked in places like Collider. Is the film a flop? Love and Thunder did really well first week, but Collider describes it as, quote, flirting with a franchise worst second weekend drop.
It's tied for the worst.
Yeah, it's like it was competing with when Collider put this article out. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which was 67%. Black Widow was 68%.
Yeah, it is at 68%. It's at 68.
Yeah, and Spider-Man: No Way Home was also 68%.
Oh, was it? That seems high. Yeah.
Yeah, that's again. I'm quoting Collider, so don't.
Yeah, I know from something I read today that it did tie for the worst drop. Though, I mean, the majority of Marvel films have had drops in the 60s. It's not unheard of for them.
I mean, I don't think financially it's going to do terrible. I think it'll do fine. I think compared again to the stuff beforehand, it's a flop.
I'd like to pause for a moment and point out that Alan just brought up box office numbers.
Yeah. I'm not. Am I not allowed to do that ever?
I'm just saying. I have been shamed into not doing numbers, and yet
because you do numbers. You just walk
plural.
In
with Alan. Let me bring up box office numbers. 68%.
Alan has restraint. You don't.
Yeah, I'm really interested in whether you guys think it's a flop, and Collider was a way to get to that because I think Rich is right. It's still going to make enough money, right? It's not like it's going to be like a loss.
Yeah, but if you look at it, if you were like the studio and you're looking at the plots of like how Ragnarok did, how Endgame did, and whatnot, I imagine now the line's not going up as a full diagonal as much. I imagine if you're plotting this, you're starting to see it dip down or plateau even. And as a studio, I would be concerned because they've got how many phases planned, and they're not going to keep doing these phases if they're losing money.
Top Gun Maverick held much better, into weeks 2 and 3 and whatnot. And it's hardly
not likely to have legs,
right?
as they say in the biz.
Yes. And so,
I mean, here's the thing.
It
know
feels
me,
like
Alan.
more. Yeah.
On average, how many times do I see a Marvel film in the theaters?
Every single one.
I would say, across like all 20 of them,
or just in general, like
I would say 2 at a minimum, usually 3. That would be my guess.
I'd say 5 on average.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's probably. I mean, depending on the film, but yeah, I mean, I see it. I generally see it usually 2 or 3 times. Sometimes 2 or 3 times in the first week.
Yeah,
that's it. I saw Thor opening day. I have not seen it since.
See, this is canary in the coal mine stuff for Marvel. Like when Patrick Hamilton says, "I may not go to see Love and Thunder for a second time." Like
I don't really feel like I'll probably see it when it pops up on Disney Plus.
Because why not? You've already got Disney, but like you're not going to pay extra to see it again.
Yeah, right. But I don't need to go. Yeah. I don't really feel a compelling need to go see it again.
Well, I'm telling you, if there was ever a moment of post-peak superhero being definitively proved, this may be it.
Yeah, no,
This could be the end.
Yeah,
that could be an ending.
That's kind of a downer of an ending.
They need to be sad.
We've had a lot of downer endings as of late. We need something a little more positive.
We're doomed. Everything's going to get worse and worse. It's like the infantry of the universe.
I did like the comics accurate Eternity. That was cool.
Here's the thing, Rich. Sometimes you have to burn the forest so that you can reseed the forest, right? Like,
how about Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder? They were good. I like the goats.
Maybe what we need to do is burn down Marvel so that cinema can flourish more broadly.
Yeah.
Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder are the
but
now in
Alan,
the comics
to a point,
and mythology, they are Odin's goats. They're not just random goats that show
like
up.
Literally we're having 3 different conversations at the same time.
But Alan, I do agree that I think when Marvel and its sort of mini empire ends in the films, I think things will get better in cinema to a point.
I think so too. The only thing I disagree with you is I don't think it's a mini empire anymore. Like it's an empire. The MCU is a full-fledged empire. It practices colonialism, in all the ways that we criticize elsewhere.
And it feels like it may have entered somewhat of a decadent stage. Like I feel like we might be in sort of like a Gilded Age or sort of Roaring 20s kind of like era. That it feels like I just as one of the things I was it Vulture or no IGN that Phase 4 has had 55 hours of content, which is more than 2 Infinity Sagas combined.
There's a lot of shows. There's a lot of stuff.
It's just like there's no. I don't really get a sense of coherence.
It seems almost like a sort of tossing of like seed everywhere to see if any of it sticks. And then, we'll try and grow that.
Just because somebody's going to pay for it, right?
Yeah,
it's
like, we've got, Kenobi, we've got, Hawkeye.
Kenobi's not MCU.
Well, I'm just saying, but Disney Plus in general, because Disney Plus,
it's the same philosophy, though. It's the same philosophy.
But, you got Miss Marvel, you got Hawkeye, you got all these little mini-series.
How dare you invoke Hawkeye in this list?
You're right. He doesn't even count as a superhero.
Right. Here's the thing, Rich, to your point. We might live in the era of peak TV, but it doesn't mean you should just keep churning stuff out no matter what.
Well, especially because I feel like with the amount of money they get from these, it's almost in the better interest to take more time and do less, but do more into them. Because I feel like again, with some of the shows they do, there's always the feeling of like, again, doing a bunch of them for quantity over quality. I feel like if you didn't, there'd be more people on Disney Plus. You know what I mean? Because they have more of a quality mark on them.
It would also create more of a sense of anticipation. Like, how long ago was WandaVision? That's like a year and a half ago or whatever?
Yeah.
Is it that long? And
when WandaVision arrived, it was
a big deal.
It was appointment television. There was this sense of anticipation. And I feel like with everything that's come since, you can just feel, Hawkeye accepted, this ebbing kind of anticipation. And I think you're right, Rich. Like, it's so available, we're almost numb to it.
Yeah, Miss Marvel's announced. Like, Miss Marvel I can watch on Disney Plus. I just haven't because it's like, whatever, I'll get to it. There's no urgency. There's no, oh boy, what are they going to do next? Because you've also seen so many of them be meh. And it's becoming
watch Ms. Marvel because there's a lot to talk about with Ms. Marvel.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. For the show, I'm going to watch it, but it's like, again, like WandaVision. I felt when I didn't have Disney Plus when it came out, and you guys were talking about it. I felt really bummed out because I'm like, it sounded like I was missing out on a lot of stuff. And it's like now I know I'm not missing out on stuff if I don't watch like Kenobi or whatever. I know it's not Marvel, but
Rich,
it's the same idea.
You've gotten to the point now where I was with the Star Wars Disney Plus a while ago. It was just like, it's not that that I would never watch Mandalorian 2. I don't feel any pull or desire to actually watch it. And it just
there's no FOMO, at all.
It's not special. Yeah. And they're cranking the stuff out so quickly. It just doesn't feel thoughtful. It doesn't feel like it's quality. It just feels like
network television.
Yeah, you're right. Like stuff that we're manufacturing as quickly as we can.
Where it's like episode of Seinfeld. It's like I missed it. It's like, well, whatever. There's another one.
Right. No, like we're manufacturing it so quickly. It's like they've decided not to follow Rich's approach, which would be the right one. Let's make really high quality stuff.
Oh, even like medium quality.
They're like what they're doing right now is they're cranking out as much filler as they can because it seems to be they're thinking, well, we're just going to, like, as long as these morons keep buying this stuff, we're going to keep cranking it out.
Yeah.
I don't know that they necessarily see it as filler.
It's so hard to, when they've got good hits.
I understand what you're saying. Like, it feels like a lot of stuff is being cranked out. But I don't know. I think I don't know what they think, but yeah, I don't think they think it's filler. I think they're trying to figure out what, like,
I mean, yeah, it could be just
the
like,
next big thing is going to be, and the problem is that nothing has, beyond WandaVision, nothing has really.
Well, I'm being a little, a little hyperbolic when I talk about, just feeding people whatever they'll take because they're morons. But the truth is, like, they're mass producing this stuff so quickly.
Yeah,
there's no chance of it being good.
Right, they've lost sight of some level of quality control, I think. And to Patrick's point, even for like people who really love superhero stuff, like I hear Patrick saying over and over again today, one of the things that Patrick wants is a sense that it's building in a story, that it's part of like a larger narrative arc that's moving us somewhere meaningful. And that also seems completely lost. Is there like, is they're throwing stuff at the wall to see what, people are going to watch?